But we have a risk and liability anytime
For all of
student
them.
is either, anytime there are students in our care and supervision.
Yeah, just from a policy standpoint, where that policy came from was, it goes back to 9/11, when we were very sensitive about out-of-state travel, and the policy reflected the need for the board to approve overnight and out-of-state because of some of the sensitivity. So now you're talking about dollar amounts.
I wasn't sure if the rest of the board was a concern, if that was a concern, hopefully the other things, but
It may still be or may not be. It was a reaction to current events.
that's what we're
Yeah, I would say that from a budgetary standpoint, if it's $1 we're spending, we need to know why we're spending it. I mean, there's limited funds out there. Who knows if and when we'll ever see our costs stop escalating. So we have to understand what we're allocating and why, and if there's a better way to, instead of going to the Boston Museum of Science, for example, you can go to the Hartford, Science Museum. Maybe there's some sense in that. I don't know that to be the case, and that may not be a great example, but I'm just saying, if it's less expensive, it's less expensive, especially if it's directly related to, the curriculum. I still think that we have disconnects between field trips and curriculum.
So how do you propose that? Is that a policy
Well,
revision?
you'd have to send that back to policy.
Andrew, you have that.
Oh, okay, I have a couple of questions. First one is, do we ever have to pay more insurance for different field trips, or do our kids always take, we're always insured, whatever happens to our kids, if they're in this building or if they're in Washington, D.C.?
Correct. The only time we have to get an additional rider is if it's out of the country.
So that's not an expense as far as insurance.
Right.
And then just going to try and understand how these expenses work again. For example, music, you say it's $10,000. How do we look at that from a budgetary perspective? In this sense, when we create our budget, do you break down that item that the music program cost, the total line item is $300,000? Do you break down out of that $300,000 that music, $10,000 will be part of transportation costs?
Right. The way our budget's broken down, it's not by music. We're school-based budgeting, so everything's by the school. So when I receive the budget from the high school, everything will be broken down under music for Torrington High School. And that's where all of this resides in the budget, in our site-based line items.
But it would be supplies, purchase services, property for music for each department.
And from the board's perspective, though, we say we want music program to get, instead of $300,000, we know that $10,000 is in transportation. We want to only allocate $290. Is that something that how we analyze things as far as curriculum and budget, or is that just like we say we want to have algebra for 100 students? We don't say we want algebra, but we don't want to buy any books for the kids in algebra.
My understanding of how this was done years back is that it wasn't broken down that nitty-gritty. It will be this year, so the budget committee will actually see Torrington High School's budget. They're going to see every single budget page that comes through. I don't think that's ever been like that in the past, so you will see that this year. And you as the board can say, cut this amount of money from this amount of this school and this account.
But yet, even if we, out of that $300,000, we say, well, gee, we see the $10,000 in transportation costs, so now we budget $290, and then it goes, the music department knows they have $290, and they go, well, we can make our allocations in a different manner, still do these trips, and we'll make up the $10,000 somewhere else.
They something we'll have to give, right?
Then we'll come back before the board is in-year transfer within, like we did a budget transfer tonight of taking 10,000 from trombones and bringing, is that how
Right.
it'll work?
If it's past the budget time,
Right.
if that isn't decided before before the board approves the budget, then that would be a budget transfer next year, which you would have to approve. And you would see all the detail behind it.
So just cutting the 10,000 wouldn't necessarily mean that this field trip for music would be eliminated.
Correct.
Somehow
They
It
can.
may be something
They'd have
else.
to reallocate.
Or maybe something else, or we may reallocate. I mean, we kind of go through the same process every budget year. We put it up on the screen after everybody's had a chance to, noodle around in the budget and say, I'm going to fight for this program, I want it back in, or you want to fund it more, and we figure out where to. I mean, the budget committee, will take a pretty big cross-section of opinions and solicited advice, if you will. We're going to recommend a budget to the board. Everybody on the board is welcome to participate in that process as much as they'd like to. We have the site visits, or not hearings, but we have the site visits, 2 or 3 of them? Two.
Public.
We have 2 public sessions, and we can still ask, the board can make it input at any point. So can a parent, if they feel strongly enough, and the board agrees to accommodate it.
So you're saying for the first time, we'll see a more transparent budget proposal because we'll see these things broken down. in
More detail, yeah, I would say more detail.
In years past, we used to just sort of get the PowerPoint presentation and a recommended budget. You didn't always get sort of a delineated, itemized version, and that's what you're doing this year.
Okay, any other discussion on this? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, unanimous? Okay. Part 2,
Just by coincidence, my office received a request to bring an out-of-state field trip before the board for approval this evening. This was a trip that was not included in the May bunch because this particular traveling exhibit was not scheduled to be in the area at that time. Just by coincidence, this is a trip to the Boston Museum of Science.
It was odd how we selected that.
Yeah, that has been suggested by the Latin teacher to take 3 of her classes, her Latin 1 CP, Latin 2, and Yukon Latin AP course, to visit an exhibit about ancient Pompeii. This is an example of the field trip form that the trip sponsor is asked to complete that includes all the details of the trip, the number of students, they attach the group of students, they identify the chaperones. They generally also submit a detailed description of what they plan to see and why it connects to the curriculum. If I have questions about it, I contact the trip sponsor directly. The cost is identified on this form. The funding source is identified. In this case, it's completely funded by the student participants. It's been signed off on by the nurse and the school principal. This trip, I believe, is in alignment with the Latin curriculum. It's an opportunity to look at artifacts from the ancient city of Pompeii, including art, jewelry, other artifacts from their daily life, and actually the plaster casts of some of the Pompeians who perished in the volcanic eruption of Mount Vesuvius. So this trip is being brought to the board for consideration for approval as an out-of-state field trip.
have a motion to approve. Second from Mr. Tebow, discussion. Well, let's just go right around. Paul, you're first.
Do we know that number, how many students?
3 of her 5 sections, it's approximate,
She
says
said about
approximately
30,
50 students.
up to 30.
Yeah.
30?
The class list is actually included with the application.
Okay, is there any limit of how many students per high school can go to that museum at one time?
I don't
Is it
believe
rate?
so.
Is there some way of verifying that?
I'm not sure how you would do that.
You have to call the,
Yeah,
museum.
she would
Yeah.
have called, and I think to make the arrangements, she would have to let them know how many were coming.
Make a reservation.
Yeah, because it's a specific
It's a
exhibit.
controlled
Yeah.
exhibit. Controlled entry.
Yeah, given the nature of the,
Artifacts.
Do you want to have any questions? Comment, discussion?
No, I think the chance to view some of the artifact from ancient Pompeii is fantastic, and a chance like this doesn't come around very often. So if it fits into the curriculum, which I'm not exactly sure how the Latin club fits into ancient history, but I'll take the stretch on this one.
Well, Pompeii is
It is, but I'm.
Comes around.
Andrew?
The Kelly bus, the $1,500, who pays that?
The Latin Club participants.
Okay, so this again, like, why is some of these transportation, school district transportation? I think you can find it, but.
Right. If it fits under what I explained with the sources of funding, some are budgeted, some are subsidized, some are fundraising, and some, the trip participants cover the entire amount. So this is trip participants covering the amount.
The cost of the transportation, the total cost of the field trip is $1,500, and that includes the transportation and the ticket to the museum?
Yeah.
And it's all student funded?
Yes, I believe so.
Substitute
understanding.
teacher and a substitute teacher?
Substitute teacher would be, if she's requesting a sub, that's $100 a day. If she's doing it with coverage, then there is no additional cost incurred for that.
I mean, this is a little bit better than some of the other ones, but I understand it's Latin, it's Italy. I still don't, it's Pompeii. We're really going there to see Pompeii. You know, I think it's still a little loose as far as it's tied to the curriculum. If they're teaching language is one thing, but to go and see artifacts. I mean, you could make the same argument if they go to the zoo and just look at the Latin name of the animal and justify it that way too.
Actually, if you look at the standards for foreign language, the ACTFL standards, one component of teaching of world languages that you include the study of culture. And I think that's the connection that the sponsor is attempting to make. Language, culture, forget the five
It's more like a cemetery.
components. Yeah.
It's like, I don't know.
That wastes all the time Western
You did. You didn't. I promise you did.
I think it's on point. I mean, when I took Latin here,
It's fair game.
the curriculum was based on studying people who were in Pompeii, so that was the backstory. I don't know if they still use that, so to me, I think it's right on point. The only question I had is does it matter that we don't have a designated person for emergency medication administration completed on the form?
That generally would be the Torrington staff person who's in charge of the trip.
So we just leave it blank because she's the only one that's going that's certified?
We don't know if she's
would
certified.
need to find that out for sure. I don't know the answer to that.
He's got his court suit on today. He's on it.
Generally, the reason that the nurse needs to sign off on it is to indicate whether there are any students who may have medical issues that need to be addressed, and they would apprise the sponsor of the trip, the Torrington staff person, of any concerns that they would have.
They also make sure all emergency contacts are in order and all information is available.
Do you have any comments?
I do. I'm just curious, did this exhibit just get announced that it was going to be there, or why are we doing this 3 weeks before the trip?
It wasn't available in May. I'm not sure why it was delayed to this point to make this such a timely thing. When I was just contacted by the trip sponsor last week and said I was not even sure whether or not we would have time to get this item on the agenda, but since we're able to piggyback it with the additional discussion about the field trips, Cheryl did agree to have it added to the agenda. So I don't know why it's such a short turnaround.
I mean, my concern is just
Planning it.
giving parents 3 weeks notice for $50 at least trip per kid, but it makes the work disorganized. I think when we're sending something home this late in the game, saying if you want your kid to come, send $50 and $55 in the school. So that would be my only concern, is a little bit more.
In the teacher's initial email, it said that it's only available in the Northeast until February 12th. Then it goes on.
No, but what I'm saying is that they
yeah.
just announced
Right.
how long is it there.
I mean, it's a 13,000 square foot exhibit. They didn't set it up yesterday.
Right. So for families that are on budgets, it would be nice if they had
Come up
some
with
time
another
to
$50.
be able to come up with the money.
I will vote for anything Latin teachers and Latin students want. Where I am on that.
Put some mic on for that. The only question I have for you, Sue, is you said that she'll get coverage. There's another Latin teacher?
That, the intention, and Ms. Creedon can attest to this, there are always many questions that come from my office about whether or not internal coverage is possible. And that could be, doesn't have to be necessarily a Latin teacher, but it needs to be a responsible certified adult to supervise any students who might remain behind.
So it would be none of us.
No.
No, they said responsible.
Probably another member of the World Language Department.
Just one quick question on the question that was brought up before. Shouldn't we have someone designated here as the emergency contact,
Yes, we should.
the emergency medication administration person?
Yes, we should.
So assuming that we approve this tonight, that will be done.
You modify the motion.
Then let's modify.
Approval can be.
Let me have the first
John
one.
would have
I
to-
will modify my motion to contingent on the approval of a satisfactory medical office.
Okay.
Okay. Do we have a second approved?
Yes, I will second.
You're right.
All right, any further discussion?
Just one quick thing, and it will be quick. I just think going forward too, I would like the administration, something we do where I work is now that we are going to paperless, I mean, these field trips really should be going into some sort of wiki site, some kind of database where, pros, cons, failures, successes, and remedies should all be listed, and it should be part of whoever's organizing this trip to update that information so that every time new teachers, different teachers go and do a similar trip, they can go there and the board of education refer, this is what we did last time, this is what I did, this worked, this didn't work. And it's basically just growing that knowledge base, and it's really easy to do, and I think we should just put that in place. These field trips should, the information and the experience of doing these logistical things should be, the knowledge base should be common to all, and we should learn and be more efficient at it. That'll help. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Passed unanimous.
There we go.
Okay. Now we move. Just hold your agenda. All right, we're going to move into our executive session. So moved by David, second by Paul, because he stood up.
The paperwork we're bringing in? We're bringing these in?
No, we don't have to. No, we're going to go, we'll go across the hall, we'll be back. All right?
So the board's voting.
Just the board.